Good evening. We're so happy to have you with us this evening. Welcome. I just love that video and seeing our students, and you're going to have the opportunity to meet some of them this evening. My name is Lynn Fulkerson. I'm one of the co-hosts of this program this evening, along with Trustee Trudy Pryor, whom you will meet later on in the program. My husband John and I learned about the International Peacemaking Program in 2005 when it was just beginning under the leadership of then President Heidi Hatzel, now President Emeritus. We had the opportunity to meet several students across diverse faith traditions and from troubled spots around the world. And we are so inspired that we've been happy to support them, enthusiastic about this program ever since. Today, we are pleased to celebrate the program's evolution into a Master's of Art in International Peace Building. We call it MAP, M-A-P. And that's why we're here this evening. We're here to tell you about the incredible students who come from all over the world to Hartford Seminary, and to tell you about why it's more important today than ever to bring trained peace builders into the world. Hartford Seminary is acting in a meaningful and powerful way on their belief and their hope that peace is possible in the world. And what an incredible hope that is. And that's why my husband and I have continued to invest in the International Peacemaking Program, or now the MAP program, for all these years. It gives us hope, and it also inspires us to act ourselves. We want to be part of something that will bring us all to a better place in this troubled world. Now I'd like to introduce President Joel Lohr, who is going to tell you more about MAP and about how it builds on the wonderful legacy of the IPP, the International Peacemaking Program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Good evening to everyone there tonight. It's wonderful to be here with you. My name is Joel Lohr. I'm the president of Hartford Seminary. I've been president here since 2018. And it's my honor to share a little bit more about this program and introduce one of our speakers and some events, some of the things that will take place tonight. Any of you who have spent any time on our campus here at Hartford Seminary in the fall and spring semesters, at least pre-COVID, you've likely met one of our peace building students. And I don't think it would be overstating things to say that these students are in so many ways the lifeblood of our campus. They bless us as faculty, staff, and trustees, and I know for certain that they bless their fellow students. They come to study peace building from around the world as it relates to religious and interreligious understanding. We've been doing it now for over 15 years. As Lynn mentioned, this program is one of the many gifts that President Emerita Heidi Hatzel gave to Hartford Seminary, and I'd like to publicly acknowledge her tonight. Thank you, Heidi, for your vision way back in 2005, in calling together people like Lynn and so many others who we'll learn about tonight to come together to build peace building skills around religious diversity and religious understanding. It was originally envisioned as an 8-month certificate program, and that's how it's lived for 15 years. But we also came to see that this program, as an 8-month program that only achieved a great certificate, a wonderful certificate, also presented 1 or 2 challenges. And one of those challenges is that many of our students would choose to stay at Hartford Seminary and complete an MA degree. And so during our strategic planning session in 2019, well, started in 2019 and finished in March of 2020, we voted as a board to redevelop this peace building certificate program into a master's program. And that's what we're here to launch tonight. Our faculty moved so quickly. I will say that in some ways the COVID pandemic, while it presented so many challenges for us moving online and living life in such different ways, it also provided a unique opportunity to redesign the program. And I want to commend our faculty tonight for the incredibly hard work that they undertook to have this new degree approved in what I think is record time. It often takes 2-3 years to redesign degrees or start a new degree, and yet we were able to do so in the space of about 8 months. We have a deep commitment to keeping this program, as we have for all 15 years, fully funded, even as an MA. We think it's crucial that every student who comes to Hartford Seminary for this program from around the world is not held back by finances. And so that means tuition, housing, flights, healthcare, books, living expenses, everything is covered by the seminary through the generous gifts of people like you in the audience today. Hartford Seminary is the place for this degree. I am convinced of that. I am so honored to work at this it's not a humble, I'm humbled to work at this amazing organization. Started way back in 1834, a place of so many firsts. I'm tempted to go through them all. I'll just say, you know, as the first seminary to welcome women in this country, way back in 1889, the first to start a center for Muslim-Christian relations, the McDonald Center. We have a long history of engaged learning, global learning, Muslim-Christian relations, and Islamic studies. We really do things differently here. But it really comes back to our students. It's all about our students, as you will learn about tonight. So on that note, we are going to watch a video together to share a little bit about the program. And in this video, you will meet two students, Jackie and Dinladi. And later in the program, you will meet two more students, Emily and Fatima. All of them are dear to us. All the students you've met, I know, are dear to you. And yet I want to also just briefly share how Dinladi, who you will meet in this video, Dinladi from Nigeria, has a special place in my life. He took a class with me that I taught, and he shared with me some of the things that he has witnessed, which are almost unspeakable. I will never forget the day. As you watch this video, just think about the fact what this man has witnessed. I will never forget the day that he shared the story of how he came to adopt a young child into his family. He recounted how he entered a nearby village in Nigeria after militants had killed its inhabitants. Almost all of its inhabitants, except, that is, as he explained, for a young infant boy that was still clinging by his mouth to the breast of his now dead mother. He scooped up that child and brought him home into his family, which was a large family of many adopted children. He is a special human being. I will never forget how he walked around this campus and continually would greet me with a bow and say, "Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir." And I kept saying to him, "No, we are thanking you for being here with us." Immediately after the video, we will hear from Ibu Patel, founder of Interfaith Youth Corps. I'm just delighted that Ibu is here with us tonight. Ibu is a friend of mine, an incredible leader in interfaith relations in our country and in the world. Started a movement called the Interfaith Youth Corps, a national nonprofit that equips the next generations of citizens and professionals with the knowledge and skills needed for leadership in a religiously diverse world. For over 15 years, Ibu has worked with governments, social sector organizations, and college and university campuses to make interfaith cooperation a societal norm. Named by US News and World Report as one of America's best leaders in 2009, Ibu served on President Obama's inaugural Faith Council and is the author of Acts of Faith, Sacred Ground, Interfaith Leadership, a Primer, a book I use in my classroom. It's an incredible book. Get it if you don't have it. And also Out of Many Faiths, Religious Diversity and the American Promise. He holds a doctorate in sociology of religion from Oxford University, where he studied on a Rhodes Scholarship. These days, Ibu spends most of his time on the road, meeting students, educators, and community leaders, doing things like this, which he is graciously doing for us tonight. Again, thank you, to talk about the complex landscape of religious diversity. One line that Ibu often uses, and he may use it again later, but I'm just going to say it, it's one that always sticks with me, which is interfaith isn't rocket science, it's harder. And I know that to be true. He will give his speech after this video. Ibu will join us again after the students speak to us, and we will have a short panel discussion, the two of us, Ibu and myself, near the end. So now we will watch a video.
Just as people of faith often contribute to violence, people of faith can build peace. At their heart, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are religions of peace. Christians, Jews, and Muslims around the world are called to peace-building work. Wanting to end violence, though, and having the requisite knowledge and skills are not the same thing. This is where Hartford Seminary's peace-building program makes a real difference. Our students develop the interreligious literacy needed to understand their religious neighbor. They build practical skills in facilitation, dialogue, and mediation to address conflicts before they become violent. Our students learn the art of nurturing reconciliation to heal past harms. In recalling his childhood, Nigerian student Njethi Gedzoka Danladi speaks about how the cultural value of hospitality meant that Christians and Muslims were welcomed into each other's homes. Now, however, due to attacks and counterattacks, such welcome is rare. Danladi came to Hartford Seminary because he wanted to better understand his Muslim neighbors. What he received went well beyond academic knowledge.
What I do not know before is a place for different religion in my heart. I do not have a place for them before. But then when I came to Hartford Seminary, I discovered religion, the dynamism of religion and how to relate with them.
Reverend Jackie Manapati came to Hartford Seminary from Maluku in Indonesia after his house was burned down in interreligious violence. Thanks to what he learned with us, he returned home equipped to help his community when violence flared again.
It was unfortunate that shortly after I returned, conflict occurred again on a smaller scale. Concerning that fragile condition, several friends and I mobilized the Interfaith Youth Movement to prevent the spread of conflict, the movement that became widely known as a peace provocateur. Using various strategies and media, especially the power of social media and arts, we provoke as many people as possible to contribute to dialogue and peace building in the public sphere.
Students like Jackie and Danladi are changing their communities. They are building engagement rather than violence between people of different faiths. Building upon 15 years of success in our Peacemaking Certificate program, we are now launching our new Master of Arts in International Peacebuilding. We've admitted students from 11 countries on 4 continents. Our program equips them to build interreligious peace in their communities. But we can't do this alone. We need partners who support our students and their work. Our unique contribution to peace is training leaders who will return to their home countries and apply what they have learned about peace building to their local circumstances. You can be part of this too, doing something concrete about interreligious violence in our world. Your contribution can support our work so there can be more capable people like Jackie and Danladi in this world.
Friends, I believe it is my turn. My name is Ibu Patel. I'm founder and president of IFYC. I have long been inspired by Hartford Seminary. IFYC was started in 2002, and I hope that, God willing, one day I can look from wherever my soul might be, look down and see having helped to start an institution that makes the kind of difference over 175 plus years the way that Hartford Seminary has. I want to begin my talk today by telling you how important I think this MAP initiative is, the difference that I believe that it can make in the world, and the track record that its predecessor has already made in the world. And I want to do that by offering the image of the Gandhi statue in Skokie, Illinois, It is the destination of my medium distance bike rides. It's about 8 miles away, so it's about a 16-mile round trip ride. And I go there as a kind of pilgrimage, as an American Muslim, as somebody of Indian heritage, and as somebody who believes of the importance and centrality of religion to peace building. The thing about this statue is that Gandhi is depicted as a peace pilgrim. He has the khadi, his shawl about him. He is walking the line, be the change you want to see in the world is inscribed on the plaque, and he is holding a book. And on my last bike ride to the Gandhi statue in Skokie, I looked closely at the book and I was struck that it didn't have a title. Now, I know and you know that where Gandhi got his principal rooting in religion was the Bhagavad Gita. He was a deeply believing Hindu. But anybody who knows anything about Gandhi or about religion and peace building knows how deeply influenced Gandhi was by the wisdom of other religions. That book might have been the Quran that he was gleaning wisdom from. That book might have been the Bible. He was deeply moved and enriched by the Sermon on the Mount. That book might have been a novel by Leo Tolstoy or essays by Tolstoy. He named one of his ashrams Tolstoy Farm after what he had gleaned wisdom-wise from the great Christian Tolstoy. Gandhi was like the student in the video that we just saw. His heart had been opened to many religions while his roots ran deep in his own tradition of Hinduism. Gandhi and his colleague and friend Bacha Khan would go to villages in India that were experiencing Hindu-Muslim conflict, and they would alternate reading between the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran so that people could, as Gandhi would say, hear the words of God and hear the words of peace. That is the kind of formation that your students are getting in the MAP program. They are enriched by the wisdom of many religions. They are challenged to be more deeply rooted in their own. They are provided with the vision, the knowledge base, and the skill set of interfaith leadership and peace building. And we all know that Gandhi is not the only example along these lines. In the year 1950, a young seminary student made his way to Philadelphia to hear a sermon on Christian love by the great Black scholar, theologian, and civic leader Mordecai Johnson, the president of Howard University. Mordecai Johnson uses as the epitomizing figure of Christian love one Mahatma Gandhi. And that young seminary student who had grown up a prince of the Black church, grown up in a Black Baptist family in Atlanta, gone to a Black Baptist church, gone to a Black Baptist college, he must have had his head spinning when he heard this idea that it was an Indian Hindu who was the most Christ-like figure of the 20th century. But young Martin Luther King Jr., a seminary student, exactly in the same stage of formation as those MAP students in the Hartford program, young Martin Luther King Jr. decided to do a deeper dive into the life of Mahatma Gandhi. It's the first step on his journey of interfaith leadership and peace building, a step that would take him to lead the Montgomery bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama. 5 years later, that would take him to build a friendship with Abraham Joshua Heschel, the great rabbi, that would a journey that would take him to nominating Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Vietnamese Buddhist monk, for the Nobel Peace Prize. We inherit this tradition of interfaith peace building. And as T.S. Eliot would say, what are we doing to make ourselves worthy of this tradition of people who are rooted in their own faith, who have been enriched by people and wisdom of different faiths, who have learned the vision, the knowledge base, and the skill set of peace building? What does that actually look like in practice? I don't think of peace building principally as the absence of conflict. I certainly think of it as the absence of violence, but I think of peace building principally as the presence of thriving, as the architecture of pluralism. And we learn from social scientists like Ashutosh Varshney that that is principally about the shape of our civic life. In a study that Professor Varshney did in India, where he took cities that were the same size and had the same demographics, and he asked the question, why is it that one city explodes in violence at the single sign of communal provocation and other cities remain peaceful and stable? Varshney found that there was one major factor that differentiated the two types of cities. The cities that remained stable and peaceful had what he called networks of engagement, positive relationships, bridges between different communities that might otherwise explode into violence, phone trees, so that when a provocation occurs, people from one community could call their friends and neighbors and colleagues and fellow leaders in another community and say, hey, we got this. We're going to remain cool and calm and stable, right? Networks of engagement. Here's the thing. Networks of engagement don't build themselves. Bridges of cooperation do not fall from the sky or rise from the ground. People build them. People who are graduates of programs like MAP at Hartford Seminary. That's what you're doing. You are graduating people like the terrific students and grads that we saw in that video who are building networks of engagement, a civic infrastructure for peace around the world. I cannot tell you how important I think it is that religion is at the heart of this. The reputation of religion right now is in the gutter. The practice of peace building not only needs religion in order to be effective, but the practice of peace building can elevate the reputation of religion for our children and grandchildren. I cannot tell you how important I believe that is, that we pass along these traditions to future generations so that they might connect heaven and earth and thriving. People in the MAP program learn stories like the story of St. Francis of Assisi in the 13th century during the Crusades, who says, I don't want war, I want relationship, I want learning, I want peace, and travels from Italy to the Middle East to meet with Sultan Malik al-Kamil. And the Sultan and the saint, they talk about faith and they talk about peace. And it is still said to this day that the multiple times a day of Franciscan prayer is drawn from the moment when St. Francis saw the 5 times a day prayer in the court of the Sultan al-Malik. That Sultan Malik al-Kamil, that is the goal. That is what we are teaching. That is what your graduates are doing. I want to end with 2 things. Number one, I want to say that I spent a lot of time at American college campuses, often invited by the dean of religious life of a college campus. And frequently the person who will organize my trip will be the Muslim chaplain on the staff of the dean of religious life. And I started to inquire, who is this Muslim chaplain at Duke, at Yale, at Princeton, at Northwestern? And over again, Abdullah Antepli, people at Yale and the people at Princeton and Tahara Ahmed at Northwestern. Oh, I went to Hartford Seminary. And everywhere I see a Muslim chaplain doing the work of building big tent civil society and interfaith cooperation on an American campus, I think to myself, that's a Hartford Seminary grad. That should be the goal of the MAP program. Wherever we go in the world, and there is somebody building the networks of engagement of peace, the presence of thriving, the absence of violence, building the social infrastructure of positive relationships, we should be thinking to ourselves, that's a Hartford Seminary grad. That's somebody who comes out of the program that President Joel Lohr, Heidi Hatzel, and that terrific faculty at Hartford Seminary created. I want to end with this, a specific Muslim prayer of peace. These are the kinds of things that orient our heart towards peace building, and actually they are skills and a language of peace building, and no other tradition on earth can give us the power of prayer in the work that we do. So I want to end with the Arabic and the English of this. Allahumma ya Maulana anta Islam wa minka Islam wa alayki yarju Islam hina rab nabi Islam wa athkilna dar Islam tabarak rabbana wa ta'alayti adal dalali wal ikram. O God, O our Lord, thou art the peace, from thee is the peace, and to you returneth the peace. O our Lord, give us a life of peace, usher us in the abode of peace. Blessed thou art, our Lord, the Most High, O the Lord of majesty and reverence. Hudafis, may God be your guardian. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ibu, for that inspiring message. The work that you and Hartford Seminary are doing to further interfaith understanding, build those networks of engagement and positive relationships is critical. Religion should be a force for good. It is unfortunate that religion is often the catalyst for violence. My name is Trudy Pryor, and I am delighted to be co-chairing this event with Lynn Fulkerson. I've been a member of the Hartford Seminary Board of Trustees off and on for a very long time. My husband and I have been donors to the IPP for many years, specifically funding scholarships for Jewish students. Long before the Hartford Seminary, long before the IPP, we supported programs and a chair in Abrahamic partnerships at Hartford Seminary. Ensuring that there is a Jewish voice and perspective in interfaith dialogue and international peace building has been very important to me. I believe that we cannot build peace unless Jews have a place at the table. Now that the program is expanding and evolving into a master's degree, I'm even more excited to see these peacemakers from around the world come together in Hartford for an experience they couldn't have anywhere else. As we've said, the Hartford Seminary difference is the opportunity to build relationships through earning an academic degree together. Yes, but also through living together. We've had Muslim students in the past who never met a Jewish person until they were living side by side, sharing a kitchen and learning about each other's religious practices and customs. We've had Christian students who got up before dawn with their Muslim friends to pray during Ramadan. We've provided the space, the support, and yes, the funding so that these students can concentrate on their important work. Now, I'd like to introduce a short video address from Ambassador Andrew Young, a proud graduate of Hartford Seminary, and as many of you know, a civil rights icon who is a close advisor to the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Ambassador Young was also mayor of Atlanta for many years, as well as the U.S. representative to the United Nations. Following his address, you'll hear from Phoebe Milliken, who is the director of the MAP program and faculty associate in international peace building. Thank you.
The thing about Hartford for me was that it was a global student body and faculty. I think we had just about every continent represented in the student body. And we had missionaries that had gone to other places where we didn't have original students from the original country. But it was an atmosphere that made the world make sense to me. I always thought of myself as a pastor, and as a pastor, I went where I was called. I was called to the National Council of Churches, and the irony of it was I was called to work with white students, helping them to get ready for integration. But then I left there and went to work with Martin Luther King, and stayed there for the next 10 years, and lived through the civil rights movement. It's hard to replace that part of my life. The weekend before he went to Memphis, we had a conversation talking about how to get the energy of the movement into politics. I never thought we were talking about me, but when Dr. King was killed, it was not long after John Kennedy being killed. Robert Kennedy was killed shortly after that. Malcolm X had been killed. There was a gallery of assassinations. So that politics wasn't very encouraging back in those days. And so everybody who was talking about running backed out. And Harry Belafonte, who had been in the meeting with Martin Luther King, said, well, it looks like you're going to have to run for Congress. And I ended up running for Congress, losing the first time, getting elected the second time. And that led me to working with Jimmy Carter as governor. And then I ended up supporting him for presidency. And he asked me to go to the United Nations because he wanted to make human rights the basis of America's foreign policy around the world. And he said that because I was with Martin Luther King, I perhaps had enough credibility to try to sell that. Hartford provided me with just enough conflict in my life to make me grow and to make me want to grow. Both my New Testament professor and my Old Testament professor were Quakers. And so there was a strong Quaker influence. That meant a strong nonviolent influence on the campus. And it meant that I would go to the Quaker meetings quite a bit. Because that was something new. I remember somebody gave me a little book by Thomas Kelly, A Testament of Devotion. And I almost learned the first couple of chapters, first couple of paragraphs. Deep within us all, there's an amazing inner sanctuary of the soul, a quiet place, a speaking voice. Eternity is at our hearts, pressing against our time-torn lives, warming us to an astounding destiny, calling us home to himself. And that was a kind of religion that came with it from within and reached out to others in service. I found that it was what I needed, and I was there for 3 years, and that gave me a very, very proper background.
I'm Phoebe Milliken. I direct the MAP program. And I'm going to start off by telling you something you already know. Every single person here tonight has conflict in their lives. Some big, some small, some personal, some communal. Conflict is part of the human condition. And it's also not really the problem. Violence is the problem. Because not only is conflict normal, it is necessary. Conflict is how we humans air our different needs and interests. It's how we pursue getting those needs and interests met. And this is true at the personal level of a couple disputing whether or not they can afford a new roof, at the communal level in a congregation wrestling with generational differences, and at the societal level in the upheaval over racial injustice. Conflict is one of the ways we resist anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We need all of this conflict in our society. And yet, conflict is dangerous. Handled poorly, it can lead to violence or abuse, which is never acceptable. So peace building at its heart is about getting good at conflict. The tools of this work are dialogue, mediation, facilitation, restorative justice. The heart of this work is telling our story and listening, really listening to the stories of others. I say heart because I do think of this like a heartbeat. Instead of lub-dub, it's story, listen, story, listen. And this may make it sound simple, and yet we know it isn't. Conflict is hard. Real listening is hard. Finding the benefit of differences is hard.
And that is why we count on our religious leaders to show the way. We ask men and women of faith to do this hard work and to take us by the hand and bring us into the work too. The MAP program at Hartford Seminary is dedicated to helping peace builders build interreligious literacy and get good at conflict. We spend a year working intensively with them on this. Then they go home to their own communities prepared to say, let us draw on the wisdom of our faith to engage those who are unlike us. Let us bring to our conflict the power of story listen, story listen. Let these processes for deep listening allow us to find common ground, to find ways to work together for justice. In August, 12 MAP students will arrive at Hartford Seminary from around the world. One of the great joys of my job is getting to spend time with these amazing students who are dedicating a year of their life to becoming better interreligious peace builders. In a couple of minutes, I'm going to introduce you to two students who completed the IPP graduate certificate in 2018. But first, I'm going to tell you some very short stories about 3 students who are coming into MAP this year. The first of these is Yazid Kamaldian. He is a Muslim man from South Africa. He's a journalist who works in print and radio and documentary filmmaking. He is also one of the founders of the International Association of Religion Journalists, and their aim is to promote accuracy and fairness in reporting on religious issues. He sees how misinformation has led to prejudice and violence, and sees his contribution to peace building as using media to share important stories about religion and interfaith engagement. Next, we have Harriet Ahalo. She's a Christian woman from the coastal region of Kenya. So Harriet is only 27, but has already made quite a name for herself as a peace builder. She founded an organization called We Rise Africa, which works in 2 main ways. It helps women get involved in leadership and governance, and it works to prevent youth radicalization through interfaith dialogue and community police dialogues. Harriet is also a fellow with the African Union Interfaith Dialogue on Violent Extremism program. She's utterly amazing. Lastly, here we have Marnie Loftman, one of our Jewish students from the United States, who is especially interested in the complexity and diversity of Jewish identity. Marnie is also a singer and a musician. They have served as a song and a prayer leader, a Jewish experiential educator, and worked with the homeless. After MAP, Marnie hopes to take their passion for music and diverse Jewish experiences to explore interfaith curricula and restorative practices in Jewish schools. Now, these are just 3 members of a truly amazing incoming cohort. They do, however, have big shoes to fill, because many students who have come before them are remarkable people. Tonight, we are joined by 2 of them. Emily Barger is an American Christian woman joining us from New York City, and Fatima Halal, who adopted the nickname Tima at Hartford Seminary, is a Lebanese Muslim woman who is joining us from Turkey. So welcome to Tima and to Emily. I have 2 questions for each of you, and I'm going to ask you each to respond in turn. Here's the first question, and Tima, I'm going to ask you to go first. So tell us about the experience of studying peace building in a religiously diverse setting.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. Assalamu alaikum and good evening, HeartSem community. It's a pleasure to be among you tonight. To answer your question, Phoebe, the IPP was quite an interesting and rich experience. When I arrived to HeartSem, I had no specific expectation of what would it be like. I just hoped for the best. However, it was quite a roller coaster, for it is not a traditional place. The experience for me was more of strengthening my spirituality in the way I feel more connected to the divine, while giving the space to academically examine different tradition and ask questions. It's exactly what I needed. I needed to ask questions, even if there were no answers, but that space of security to ask questions was enough for me. I was studying theories of peace building and taking 2 mind-blowing courses on the history of Islam and Christianity while sharing coffee and cake with my Jewish and Christian colleagues. I learned about the 3 major branches of modern Judaism while cooking a Russian, and I hope I'm saying it correctly, meal in the kitchen. I cannot speak of my experience at Hartsem without mentioning the event when Emily's family invited me for Easter and even got me presents for Christmas. I cannot but talk about the opportunity on every event of how I was welcomed on church visits, and describe the excitement that Emily and our IPP colleagues had when we went to a mosque for Friday prayer. To sum it up in one sentence, it's an experience of learning, searching, and growth from a distant perspective that allows one to develop a sense of participating in a holistic process.
Thank you, Tima. Emily?
Yeah, well, Tima touched on a lot, but just to echo what she said, obviously one of the major amazing points of being in IPP and at Hartford Seminary is just getting to meet people who are different from you, getting to meet Tima, who's from Lebanon, who's Muslim, getting to meet people from all around the world of not only different faiths, but who practice their faith in different ways. And so studying peace building in a religiously diverse setting was eye-opening, which is obvious, but it was also informative to how I now approach my interactions with people who are different from me, regardless of whether it's religion or ethnicity or race. Just listening, learning to listen. I think that's the biggest thing that I took away from IPP was the first thing you have to do is just sit down and listen to the other person's perspective. And as Tima mentioned, my family sort of took Tima in and we became really close friends. So I really value the lifelong friendships that I made at Hartford Seminary through the International Peacemaking Program.
Thank you. Yeah, when we were first starting to think about this event, I said, oh, what two students could we get? I was like, Emily and Tima. I want Emily and Tima because I know how much the two of you sort of meant to each other as you were studying together and having all of these experiences with the other colleagues in the program as well. So I have one more question, and Emily, I'm going to start with you this time, and you actually started to go in that direction already, but how does what you learned at Hartford Seminary inform or apply to the work, whether that's professional or voluntary, that you do now?
Yeah, so I work in media. I work as a video producer at Now This News. So I have the ability to reach millions of people every day, and that's not a responsibility I take lightly. And I'm able to seek out stories that aren't being told and approach them with nuance that I wouldn't be able to if I hadn't learned what I learned at Hartford Seminary through not only the academics, but also through living with people who are different from me, seeing other cultures, seeing other religions up close, and again, asking those questions. So most recently, this has been especially important in my personal coverage and the coverage of Now This, of the recent conflict, the recent violence in Israel and Palestine, which obviously is an ongoing conflict, but it's often something that the media is one-sided about or doesn't want to talk about. And so I was able to bring in the knowledge through the Christian-Muslim relations that I studied at Hartford Seminary, through my experiences with Muslim and Jewish and Christian people at Hartford Seminary, and really bring nuance to my storytelling and make sure that we were covering this really important issue fairly and with humanity.
Thank you so much. Tima, I turn it to you.
Well, every bit and each component of the program applies to what I'm doing today, even on a daily basis. The program and Hartsem equipped me with an interfaith and historical knowledge that I use whenever I debate xenophobia or counter hate speech. I reflect and share my experience living with people from other faiths as an example of how it is easy to live together. I extend my experience about the thought that commonalities depend more on the attitude that two people have for each other than where they were born, and that without diversity of opinion, the discovery of truth is impossible. I learned at Hartsem that peace and conflict start with a conversation. It could be on religion, politics, or one of Gilmore Girls episodes, like the case of me and Emily, and it needs two people listening to each other, like Emily mentioned. And that is exactly the case of how I grew this wonderful friendship with Emily. Our first conversation was in my room, talking about a part of our private lives, and the way she was actively listening made me feel that I'm in a secure space. And this secure space also extended itself to the classrooms. So that's one part. The other part is one of the milestones of my what I learned at Harsem is the Islamic feminist course that led me to pursue my master's in interdisciplinary gender studies. I'm more comfortable to give a speech on gender equality in a room full of religious leader men. I'm more comfortable talking about women leadership in faith and diplomacy and countering patriarchal rhetoric from an Islamic point of view. Today, I serve as the MENA representative for the International Youth Committee at Religions for Peace International. And when the committee is in a stage of brainstorming ideas for a campaign to reflect on our strategic areas, I'm able to focus on our common ground and on common concerns for I'm aware that we share common concepts of humanization and believe in mankind as one large community capable of evolving. And that is thanks to Harsem. I have mentioned it once at the end of my experience at Harsem that the seminary is the weirdest place I have ever been. And I meant it in a positive way because it is very unique. And it keeps inspiring me to be creative and brave about the new ideas and the new ways of relationship building in any advocacy project or work I'm involved in.
Thank you. So I'm hearing all of this about questions and stories and listening and inspiring the better storytelling and bravery and being able to find places of common ground. And it just thrills me to hear both of you talk about this. It really does. So thank you so much to both of you for being here tonight. You've really enriched this experience for all of us. Getting to hear from you and about your experience sort of puts all the rest of this into perspective. It is about ultimately the students who come through Hartford Seminary's doors. So thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you.
I am now going to turn it back over to President Lohr and to Eboo Patel.
Wow. Thank you for that. I'm Eboo, as I listen to these amazing students and Phoebe's very able leadership, and we need to just call attention to the fact that students they learn through their leaders. So Phoebe, thank you for that. I'm just listening here, just thinking to myself, Eboo, I don't know if you feel the same way, but if this is the next generation, people our age, as we move into midlife and further, we kind of, the tendency is to look at the next generation and say, what is happening? It's all going downhill. And when I meet these students, I think the next generation is going to be okay. We've got some people out there that are doing great work. Any thoughts on that? I mean, just what hope we have for the future when you meet students like Emily and Fatima?
Yeah, I smile. Benjamin Mays, the great president of Morehouse College in the early middle part of the 20th century, he used to say to friends, you can't get these kids, my students at Morehouse, interested in more than a date and a hamburger. That's all they're interested in, dates and hamburgers, right? And of course, King was a student at the time, Abernathy was a student, right? And so, I mean, it's everybody. Like I'm in the full swing of middle age, and like my wife is like, man, you should hear how you just like stop it, right? Like stop it, stop revealing how middle-aged you are. And I just think when you read King's biography or his autobiography, you read Andrew Young's autobiography, the turning point chapter is, and when I was in college and when I was in graduate school, I took this course, I had this conversation, I went to this lecture, right? And that's documented. And like, they will name a specific course and a specific conversation and a specific lecture and a specific professor. And they will often not know it at the time. And so one of the things I'm so struck by with Tima and Emily is they're not that far out of grad school, and they can point to, and I went to Easter at Emily's house, right? I learned about Passover. I learned how to articulate an Islamic feminism that I feel comfortable standing at a podium in front of a bunch of guys with regulation length beards and advancing it as a legitimate way of being Muslim, right? I think that it is college and graduate school change us. And it is easier to recognize that at 45 than it is at 25. And your graduates recognize it throughout the years.
So thinking of kind of older generation of the scholars on whose shoulders we stand, I'm reminded of great Catholic theologian Hans Kuhn. I'm sure you know the quote, but I'm going to add something to it that one of our IPP grad who we met tonight in the video, Jackie Manupati, added to this. I thought it was a wonderful addition. I actually think it makes a lot of sense. So Hans Kuhn's quite well-known quote in interfaith circles is, "There will be no peace among the nations without peace among the religions, and there'll be no peace among the religions until there's dialogue between the religions." That's a rough quote. I mean, it's pretty close to what he said. And Jackie added to that, and his firm belief is that there won't be dialogue between the religions without friendships between the religions, like without real friendships, concrete friendships. And I think as I listen to our students tonight, as I meet them, as I hear their stories, and now we just heard from Fatima and Emily, there's dialogue is really so theoretical unless we form friendships, unless we take those steps. Do you have any thoughts on how program, and somehow, the immersed learning, it's not just learning, but living together. I mean, being invited to a Seder meal, and I'm still a student, and having a Muslim student there who I knew had never, she in the classroom I taught said, "I've never met a Jewish student before," from Indonesia, largely Muslim population, not a lot of Jewish people. She had never met a Jewish student. She had spent all day preparing this, actually it was a Passover, or sorry, a Shabbat meal. She had spent all day preparing the vegetables, helping cook this meal with her Jewish student, her friend. And when she came to Hartford Seminary, she had never met a Jewish student before. Talk about friendships. I mean, to me, they seem foundational.
I mean, I think it's friendships. I also think it's the distinctive friendships that are built in residential education, right? And, for hundreds and hundreds of years, wealthy people and aristocrats have sent their kids for residential education, right? Oxford and Cambridge and Al-Azhar and the University of Paris and Bologna, and then the British private school system, right? They have known the benefits of that. And I think one of the wonderful things about the United States is we have attempted to democratize that, and it's American philanthropists who have really built that. And so the people who have invested in Fatima and Emily, and before them, Andrew Young. I mean, my wild guess is Andrew Young, his time at Hartford was supported by a philanthropist, right? And that really matters. The environment in which you are with somebody 24/7. And you might think to yourself abstractly, I am never going to be friends with somebody like that. I don't even know they exist to be friends with them. And then you find yourself in a place where you're like, I can't find my way around the grocery store. And the person that you thought in the category you thought you'd never be friends with is like, well, hop in the front seat. I'll drive you there. What do you need? Right? That only happens in residential education, and it costs money. And it is the best investment you can have. Look, we don't give away $100,000 scholarships at IFYC. We give away a lot of $1,000 mini grants, but we say yes. We just find a way to say yes, right? Like we are not in the business of turning 19-year-olds away. We're not in the business of that. We're in the business of saying, you got an idea and you got a commitment to make it happen. We're gonna do our part. And I just think the single best investment that we can make for the future of our world is residential education for future leaders. And you're watching that from Fatima and Emily through Andrew Young.
Absolutely. You're doing my work for me, Ibu. The truth is, I have such a strong and firm belief that this is what we are called to do at the seminary. First of all, we're blessed with a healthy, the gifts of the past donors over the years, having a long history. So we have a reasonable endowment, which supports the work of the seminary. We have donors like some you've met tonight. The fact that we have graduated, I think over 60 students over the last 15 years. There's been cohorts of 3 to 5, 6, 7, 8. through the IPP program, fully funded. It's really important to us. They need to, we just don't want that flight. I mean, just a flight in today's, sometimes a flight costs as much as some people might make it a year, you know, in certain countries. And so making this affordable, allowing students to come from wherever they are to come study at Hartford Seminary is so important. It was the vision of Heidi. It's one we've lived out. It's one that, and you talked about, we're not going to turn anyone away. You know, this year we just it's a huge leap of faith. We're going to welcome 12 students. In fact, we got to the point where we were worried about 1 or 2 visas maybe not coming through. So we said, let's welcome 14 students. Let's accept them all. If they all get in, we'll make it work. You know, if we can get them through the visa process. Right now, there's a lot of consulate issues. So we're taking a risk, and we're here to share that vision with people who can help support them. I hope I'll say more in a minute about that. In fact, I probably should close out the event by doing so. Ibu, thank you for taking some time to talk. Thank you for doing my job in a sense. I mean, you do this too. You're raising money for the Interfaith Youth, or we're partners in this work. I love working with you. It's awesome.
I love working with you too. Yeah,
it's good work.
Look, we are building a social infrastructure for an interfaith globe, and the pillars of that are institutions where philanthropists support future leaders. That's how this works, right? There's no magic beans, there's no shortcuts. It's about institutions that nurture future leaders. And you can't do that without the investment of people who say, I believe in you, and I'm gonna put what I've got, financial resources, with what you've got, which is educational resources, with what young people have, which is vision and energy.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. Let me thank everyone. Let me do that with a few words to close out our event. Thank you for your remarkable address, as well as the words we had just now, sharing a little bit more. I want to thank Ambassador Andrew Young for his remarks. I've had the honor of sitting with Ambassador Young in Atlanta for a meal, along with Beverly Daniel Tatum, wonderful hosts in Atlanta. They have changed that city. We talk about global peace building, but they're also doing this in their cities. It's beautiful work. I'm thankful for them. Lynn Fulkerson, Trudy Pryor, you've chaired this meeting. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for your commitment, along with your spouses. I would be remiss if I didn't mention your spouses, John Fulkerson and Neil Pryor. Your support has been extraordinary. I know I'm going to embarrass you, but I just want to point out publicly to thank you for investing over $1 million of your own money into the seminary, into our peace building work. As Trudy mentioned, this extends way back into our Building Abrahamic Partnerships work, on which this program is really grounded and has grown out of. Wow, thank you so much. I hope that your generosity will inspire others to do the same. On that note, I would be remiss if I did not mention a few other longtime major donors to the Peace Building Program, to the Heidi Hadsell Scholarship Fund, which supports peace building students, and to those who have supported the Abrahamic Partnerships Program in the past. David Carson, I believe you're out there tonight. I just need to mention that you've been truly instrumental in all of this. You deserve special mention. As well, I need to just run through a few names here because they are so important. You have been major donors to this program and to the peace building programs. Arthur Vining Davis Foundation, Martin and Aviva Budd, the E. Rhodes and Leanne B. Carpenter Foundation, Jeffrey and Jane Deagle, Alice Fraser Evans, thank you, Alice. Francis Asbury Palmer Fund with Allison Chisholm, thank you. Peter and Susan Kelly, John B. Lindner, Hugh and Kate McLean, if you're there, thank you. Van and Maria Emma McMurtry, thank you. The Plowshares Institute, Nancy and Stephen Roberts, Ted and Ellen C. I think I saw you on the call tonight, thank you. Alan B. Slifka Foundation, thank you. Gary Tabazinski, thank you. Trinity Episcopal Church of Hartford, and last but not least, Jacqueline L. White. Those are just some of the donors. It's not by any means all of them, but these are people who have given major resources to support our students. I also need to thank you, Phoebe, for your amazing leadership of this program. This is a critical program. We call it our flagship program. I want to thank Emily and Fatima, for your participation. You are the students, you are the stars of this program, and this is why we're here tonight. You're not here to listen to me and my tie. We're here to learn about the amazing work that you're doing in this world as a result of your learning here. May God bless your lives and your work. Hartford Seminary is about the intersection of religion and peace, two things that don't always seem to go together in our very complicated world. we need your help. I'm just going to make a plea here. We do need your help to offer this peace building program to interfaith leaders from around the world. They are eager and ready to obtain the skills that they need to build a more just and peace-filled world. And so if you'd like to learn more about the MAP program, if you'd like to support it in any way, however large or small, please reach out to me. I can be found online. My email address is just jlor@heartsem.edu. I'm happy to talk to you. And so thank you. On behalf of the seminary, all of our panelists tonight, I want to thank you again, and I want to say good night.